Hello everybody and welcome to the War Room. This one is for this weekend's UFC main event between Rob Font and Cody Garbrandt. Okay, well let me get into the stats first. We'll start there. So Rob Font 18-4, Cody Garbrandt 12-3. So obviously experience on the side of Rob Font. Has been around a long time, been in the UFC a long time. Pretty much same as average fight time. 9:06 for Font, 8:57. I mean, we're lingering around the 9-minute mark here, so that'll be the moment to watch out for when you're paying attention to the fight. Height and reach, almost exactly. It's exactly the same. Reach though is considerably different. I mean, this is UFC stats. They've got Rob Font listed with 71-inch reach compared to Cody Garbrandt, who's 65-inch. That will play into this fight, and I'll explain why in a moment. Both orthodox, considerably higher striking output for Rob Font, but that makes sense given the fact that Cody Garbrandt's a big puncher, a one-punch knockout puncher. Very nice, clean footwork, very measured punching when he's in the right mindset, which is really the majority of what this breakdown is going to be about. We know what these guys are about. There are a couple of technical differences between the two which make it interesting, but the psychology is the most interesting thing, and that's where Garbrandt is unfortunately, he's shown his hand a few times. We've seen him vulnerable because he's lost his temper, because he's been angry and emotional, and it just never suits him. He's dangerous no matter what. He's got really heavy hands, especially for the weight class. He's able to put people out one shot. I mean, you think back to that the Miyazaki fight. You just, as soon as you watch that punch land, you're like, that is like a natural power. That's something that, like, you can tell when he throws that he's been punching with venom since he was a kid. Like, you build a really pronounced power. You could say like Robbie Lawler's another good example. But the emotional side of it is where, although it's a strength for him, especially as it's probably been all the way through training as motivation, if he's not in control in the fight, that lack of measure usually has cost him recently, quite obviously. What's crazy to me though is when I think of Cody Garbrandt when he faced Dominic Cruz and when he came in against TJ Dillashaw, like you've got the same fighter with two completely different animals inside them. On one side, he's cruising. He's against Dominic Cruz, he's like, he's in third gear. He's looks just so relaxed, so comfortable. He's got the range and the distance measured against one of the most difficult guys to deal with range and distance, and he just looked. It looked like he was in his element. It looked like he'd found his rhythm. But then stepping in there against TJ Dillashaw with that added emotion, and all of a sudden it goes out the window. And same thing in the second fight as well. And then obviously, you lost 2 in a row, you're backed into a corner, you fight someone like Pedro Munoz, he's determined to get a win back, and you stand in the pocket with Pedro Munoz and you might as well flip a coin as well. Garbrandt's incredibly dangerous, but he can get trapped in this fight by his own emotion. He can get drawn into a scrap and get punished for it. This is where the reach advantage comes in on Rob Font's part. The way that they stand as well is a big part of this. Cody Garbrandt's, he's quite fluid in his stance. His weight shifts depending on how the fight's going. Rob Font, on the flip side, whether he's going forward or backward, he's always lead foot heavy. He's always got a tight, high guard. And one of the reasons why this is really going to benefit him in this fight is because most of his weight's loaded over his lead leg. As soon as Garbrandt swings at him, there's going to be a lot of distance that he can cover moving away without moving his lead foot. So he can step immediately back into range and counter. So the reach is going to pay off there because he's going to be able to make Garbrandt miss much easier given the fact that there's, a 6-inch difference in reach. The other difference is that Rob Font doesn't get emotional. He's determined and he's focused, but he's never reckless. He's never like, you never see him look like he's losing control in there, which is where he can kind of coast in this fight a little bit and know that he's got, a bit of a junkyard dog that's waiting to take a bite out of his leg in Cody Garbrandt. If you prod him enough, that person will come out. And as soon as that Garbrandt comes out, he's more reckless, which makes him less dangerous, even though his punch is still thunderous. But the other thing is that he's he's less considered in his approach. So you don't then get feints. You get big power. You get people. You get Cody Garbrandt. He loads up. You can see that this swell in his body when he's going to throw a big power punch. When he's not in control. When he's boxing clever and he's against Dominic Cruz and he's happy in third gear and he's showing you how good he is and how skilled he is, it's a faceless opponent. He just cruises all the way through and he looks great doing it. And then he applies that punching power as and when he needs it. That's the version that we need to see with Cody Garbrandt here. If he comes in against Rob Font and he's reckless and he's emotional, he's going to be swinging for Rob Font and he's probably going to be missing a lot of those shots. And Rob Font's also got the opportunity to level change. Let me go grab a quick drink and I'll come back to that because takedown offense of Cody Garbrandt is 100%. So although we might see Rob Font level change and try for a takedown, he has a 36% success rate. So, you can imagine where that's going to go. One moment. So, it's a lot of talking. Dried my mouth out. Right. So Cody Garbrandt's got 100% takedown offense. So if you Rob Font knowing this, you know that there's a second benefit in getting him fired up and aggressive, because when he comes charging forward, if you time that level change perfectly, you can hit him in the midsection and fold him over your shoulder, and then you can finish the takedown. And even if the reason for Rob Font to do it is to be able to try and scramble and chase a submission, he still needs to initiate a grappling exchange, and it's much easier to do it when you've got someone charging forward recklessly. If he's trying to back Garbrandt up and level change and take him down against the fence, I think he's going to be there all day. And I think horsepower, I think strength, I think in the clinch, I think Garbrandt's going to be able to just move him around. I think there's going to be a significant strength difference for Garbrandt. But this is 5 rounds, and that could cost him if he's forced to use it in the early rounds. There are a few different ways that Rob Font plays this, but it's definitely more weighted to the Diaz-style spectrum of bang, 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 out the way, slip, cover, bang, 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 just kind of chip away at Garbrandt. See if you can do some damage, see if you can sting him and hurt him, see if you can wear him out a little bit, provoke him, get him angry. If then as his flurry's coming towards you, you can counter, then great. Rob Font's also got great rising shots, and he doubles and triples them up. Same thing with his knees as well. 2 good things if you need to fill that center channel with a junkyard dog running at you. Cody Garbrandt needs to leave the junkyard dog in the yard. He needs to come with his A game. He needs to come like he did against Dominic Cruz, a faceless opponent. Don't get frustrated if you miss. Don't get anxious in that first round and feel like you've got to put your foot on the gas and try and starch him. Keep your boxing range and walk Rob Font down. He is there to be hit, especially if Garbrandt's using feints, so Rob Font doesn't know what to do with his head movement. If Garbrandt's just swinging, Font's going to be able to read that and slip and move and roll and get out the way. And that additional 6 inches of reach is going to sting him from a range, and that's only going to add fuel to the fire for Garbrandt. He's only going to make him more frustrated. There is a threat of submissions from Rob Font's side. 4 submissions, 8 knockouts out of 18 wins, 4 of them submissions. It's all about neck attacks for him. It's guillotines, Darce chokes. He's got 1 armbar in his MMA debut, but it's much more about, same as the Diaz brothers. It's much more about pressuring with hands and then snatching the neck when it's there. He caught Douglas Silva de Andrade with a guillotine, and he's not an easy guy to sub. But he was having his way with him in the striking range, which then encourages the level change. One other thing that I need to point out with Rob Font as well is he's got a really nice, digging right hand. Because he stands heavy on his lead leg with his guard up, his shoulders are quite square. So his rear shoulders kind of loaded, ready to punch. And sometimes, you see Cody Garbrandt and he'll come in kind of low. I can just see that opportunity of him sniping right down the pipe. He caught Almeida with it. It was the same punch he caught Moraes with as well. You punch right down the pipe, straight into the chin. And with also, his rising attacks, that couples quite nice. You go down and then come up with a knee, or down and then up with an uppercut. I'm interested to see how this plays out. I think both of these guys are incredibly talented, and I think the thing that sways this fight is the psychology. you know, Rob Font's a very skilled and very talented fighter, but to stay away from the power of Cody Garbrandt, a calm, you know, concise Cody Garbrandt, not a reckless, I'm going to rip your head off Cody Garbrandt. A clear, precise Cody Garbrandt over 25 minutes is a long time to stay away from his punching power. And 100% takedown defense suggests that Garbrandt can force him into a boxing match. It's really on Rob Font to make this an MMA fight. You know, mix it up, throw some takedowns in there, attack that center channel and beat his legs up. But nevertheless, I think it's a fascinating clash. And they're right next to one another in the rankings as well. What are they, 3 and 4? Rob Font just slightly ahead. And if Garbrandt beats Rob Font, he's got Corey Sandhagen right above him, who's a very similar kind of problem. Heavy on the lead leg, long arms. You know, it's almost like these bantamweights are either one or the other. They're either Cody Garbrandt, Peter Yan, Jose Aldo, Marlon Moraes, kind of short stature, or they're these long guys that stand heavy on their lead leg like Font and Sandhagen. Interesting mix at bantamweight, and I think either of these guys could take the belt. I'm glad that Rob Font's got some light on him, because I think he's a very exciting guy, and I think he could get inside the head of Cody Garbrandt if he plays his cards right. Interesting fight. Enjoy, and I'll see you next time.